What's good, everybody? My name is BBK Dragoon, and welcome to my World of Warcraft Complete Beginner's Guide. This video is designed to help brand new players get into World of Warcraft. I think for many of you who watch my channel regularly, if you like the games I post, you'll love World of Warcraft. Destiny 2 is super duper sale right now, and I've just been having a lot of fun playing WoW, so I wanted to share that experience with you guys. And if any of you are interested in getting involved in this game, I wanted to give a nice foothold. Since WoW's been out for 13 years, I think there's plenty of players who are interested, but have no clue where to start. This video is going to talk about how you can play the game, the differences between the starter edition, the base game, and the latest expansion. What route should you pick? Should you use a level booster, or should you not? How should you pick a class? Well, what about picking a server that actually is populated and represents a good experience for you? All that is going to be covered here. So first of all, why would you want to play WoW? Well, I've been playing WoW now since vanilla, on and off, and I love this game. It's an MMORPG that's remained one of the behemoths in the MMO scene for a long time because it's got a massive world, tons of content to complete, great dungeon and raid content, and a cool PvP system. Most of all, Blizzard just does a fairly good job supporting this game. Yes, it's one of the few relics of the MMO era that still charges a subscription fee, but the patches that Blizzard delivers generally come packed with new raid content, tons of great quality of life improvements, and lots of reasons to continue playing the game and progressing your characters forward. So with all that said, why don't we hop in how to play? First of all, there are many different ways that you can start in World of Warcraft. The three main ones are the Starter Edition, the base game, and the latest expansion. The Starter Edition lets you play a character from level 0 to 20, and at that point, you're pretty much done. It's free to everybody. You can go and download it on the Blizzard app right now, no subscription needed, and it's an okay way to test the waters out. Your character has a lot of restrictions on them, like social restrictions. You can't really trade with other players, so it's a limited experience, but just gives you a glimpse at kind of what WoW is sort of like. That is an okay way if you're really timid and you're not sure whether you want to try this game at all, or whether it even will run nicely on your system. WoW's been out for a long time, so it's optimized for a very wide variety of systems, but the Starter Edition, since it's free, if you're totally unsure, that's a definitely good way to check it out. Then there is the base game of World of Warcraft. This is $20 usually. It's on sale for Black Friday for $10 right now, which is a pretty good deal. The base game lets you have all the features unlocked except for the most current expansion's content. You can level a character right now from 1 to 100. It always lets you basically level your character to whatever the cap was of the previous expansion. Expansions have come out all throughout WoW's lifespan, but Blizzard doesn't want you to have to buy all of the previous expansions in order to experience Endgame. So if you want to experience the full package of WoW right now, you'll need the base game plus Legion. Legion lets you level your character from 100 to 110 through what I think are some of the best leveling zones in the game, or at least the most well-polished currently. And then you get to experience current endgame, which is the latest dungeons, the latest raids, all the world quest content, and basically the day-to-day quality of life changes that I spoke of a few minutes ago. Which route should you go? Well, the base game itself, like I said, will let you level a character from 1 to 100. It's also it's like a lot less expensive than buying the expansion plus the base game together to play current content. So just buying the base WoW might be a really good option for you if you're wanting to get involved in the game, but not really sure how committed you are just yet. I will give you this warning of caution. The leveling zones back from, let's say, 1 to 80 aren't really that polished or refined and don't necessarily really reflect the experience of what WoW is like day to day. Once you reach endgame, the game changes dramatically. And so I think a lot of new players try out the leveling experience. They get, 60 or 70 hours in, depending on how quickly or slowly they're leveling their character, and they aren't super excited. They're reaching like level 90 or whatever. They're going, man, this has been sort of tedious because a lot of that older leveling content just hasn't aged super gracefully. Now, if you buy Legion, it includes a level 100 character boost. This basically lets you skip all that content, gives you a level 100 character with some decent leveling gear, and you get to start your experience of all the current Legion content. This is a route that I recommend a lot of players take, just because I don't want to see folks turned off by the older leveling experience. Veteran players understand the leveling experience and understand it's just sort of the tutorial. This is what you're doing to get your character to endgame to really then play the game. A lot of new players may not experience that, and maybe don't want to put, 50 hours into their character before they're at, level cap. It's just something to think about. I will say if you do level a character from 1 to 110, it gives you a greater sense of accomplishment, and you will definitely know that class a heck of a lot better than somebody who just used the booster and now is trying to jump in after they've, already gotten, let's say, 10 or 11 abilities. Although WoW is doing a much better job communicating that. Now, whether you go with the base game or base game plus Legion, you will need a subscription to play. It's $15 a month, and like I said, it goes towards supporting those patch content cycles. That can be pretty expensive for a lot of players, so I know this won't fit everyone, but I think it is worth it. The amount of support Blizzard does give is fantastic, and there have been times where I've specifically unsubbed because I didn't think the patch content was really doing a great job. Cough, cough. Warlords of Draenor. Before we build our first character, we need to pick a realm. A realm is the server that you're going to be playing on. There's a few different types of realms: PvP, normal, role-playing, and role-playing PvP. I recommend normal servers for 98% of players. PvP servers are great if you like world PvP, but can be frustrating for new folks if you're not used to it. It basically means you're continually flagged for PvP when you're out in the world, so if you're an alliance player who bumps into a horde player, the two of you can go at it. When you're leveling, depending on the realm, there are some players who take this and abuse it, where they're going to continually try and fight you out in the open world, a higher level character coming along and beating you up. Now, there's some fun in PvP servers once you're geared up, because it can lead to some real rivalries between the Horde and the Alliance, but for the most part, normal servers I think are better for new players because you can flag yourself on or off for PvP if you want to participate in that world PvP stuff. Role-playing servers are like they sound. You build a backstory for your characters, and you communicate and roleplay as that particular character. Some weird stuff can happen on RP servers. There's legendary stories of RP servers and some of the craziness that goes on within them, but if you're really interested in the RPG side of the game, you may want to look into this. Do be aware there are rules, though, for the role-playing servers that you'll want to read about, and then RP PvP servers are just that, role-playing PvP servers. I would recommend looking for a server that has medium to full population. That way it feels like a really active server, and your auction house will be very, very full of great stuff, and the economy will be flowing smoothly. A real part of MMOs is the social side of the game. One of the downsides to picking a more popular server is that around release times of new expansions, the login queue times can be pretty long, but there's something fun about playing on some of the more popular and well-known servers that the YouTubers sort of center themselves around. A website to visit is realmpop.com. Here, you can take a look at your particular server and get at a glimpse how many Horde players, how many Alliance players there are, and how active the auction house is. This is pretty important because if you're going to be, let's say, a Horde character on a very Alliance-dominant server, it might be pretty frustrating trying to find groups. There are definitely some very lopsided servers where 90% are Alliance and 10% are Horde. So once again, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. This is the character login screen. This is where you can pick the character that you want to play or create a new character. If this is your first account, it'll take you directly to the character creation screen. There are 12 classes in World of Warcraft, 11 of which will be available to you from the start. The one that isn't is the Demon Hunter, the newest class that came out with Legion. You need a level 70 character before you can create a Demon Hunter, because the Demon Hunters start at level 98. The Death Knight used to be this way, where you needed a character that was already, I think, level 60 in order to build one, because they started at level 55, but I don't believe that's the case any longer. In MMORPGs, there's three main roles: the tank, the healer, and the damage dealers, or DPS. The tank does exactly what it sounds like. Your job is to hold aggression and make sure that the enemy threat is centered on you. In a dungeon environment, you want to make sure the enemies are attacking you and not your teammates, because you're really, really tough. You got a lot of HP, you've got super strong armor, and you can take the hits. You won't be pushing out as much damage as your DPS buddies, but the tank role is really cool because you get to lead the group and you get super fast queue times when you're searching for dungeons, because tanks are always a necessary part of the normal composition for dungeons and raids. Next up is the healer. The healer role is pretty self-explanatory. It's your job to keep your teammates alive. Buffs, debuffs, all that good stuff. Not a whole lot to say here. Healers also get very fast Q times because they are something that's always necessary. And then finally, DPS or damage. Damage dealers can be melee or ranged in World of Warcraft, and your job is to put as much damage onto the enemy targets as possible. The normal dungeon composition is 1 tank, 1 healer, and 3 DPS. As a result, DPS have the longest queue times when it comes to the dungeon finder, as there's a lot of DPS and there's less tanks and healers for the most part. Each class has multiple specs. Specs are like subclasses in Destiny. They allow you to experience a different style of play with the character. Some classes have multiple specs that allow you to try out different roles within the game. For instance, the Druid has a tanking spec, DPS specs, and a healing spec. The Paladin has a healing spec as well as a tanking and DPS spec as well, which is pretty cool. Some of the classes, like the Hunter or the Mage, only have DPS specs. I'm going to link on screen now a guide video from Mad Season Show, one of the best WoW YouTubers out there, where he details every single class within the game, their specs, and why you may want to choose that particular class. I recommend starting with DPS for new players. Tanks and healers generally have more pressure placed upon them in group activities. If the tank dies or the healer dies, the group usually wipes, whereas DPS, usually if one dies, it doesn't necessarily wipe the group. If you're unsure about which role you want to play, pick a class that has multiple options within specs to give you the opportunity to play a different role down the road. The warrior can be a tank or a DPS player, so you really get to mix and match. One of the coolest things that was added with World of Warcraft Legion is the class trial. This lets you start a character at level 100, it teaches you a basic tutorial of that character, and then you get to play through the entire Broken Isles introductory sequence to get a feel for that character. It'll let you then get your artifact weapon and play with that character for a little bit, and then once the time has run out after you've had the chance to try the character out at level 100, you can use a level booster to then go and play that character at level 100. This is a super great way to get to try out a class at level 100 without taking the risk of putting a ton of time into the character. If you don't like the class, you can do a different class trial, or if you ever want to come back to that particular character and apply a level boost later on, you can. I highly, highly recommend this. Every class plays very differently, has a different fantasy, and definitely embodies different personality types. So sample things. You may really not like healing all that much, or you may absolutely love being, a more DPS style player. Finally, your last choice is picking a faction, the Alliance or the Horde. It's not the Alliance are good guys and the Horde are bad guys. They both have their own rich background stories and lore, and their leaders have been forced to make tough decisions on both sides of the fence. Picking a faction really comes down to what kind of character traits do you align with. Both the Alliance and Horde occupy their own personality traits, and they each have their own capital cities, their own zones, and with the upcoming expansion, Battle for Azeroth, it's going to play a much larger role who you align with. You'll notice that the Pandaren race falls in the middle. That's because after you've completed the initial leveling zone for the Pandaren, you get to choose Horde or Alliance. So that wraps up the very basics for creating your first character, picking a realm, and choosing the route which you would like to take. In a future video, I'm going to be talking about individual tips for both starting a brand new character and for the level boosted 100 characters. We'll talk about keybinds, gearing up, what's the quickest way to level, and then reaching endgame, what to do at endgame, all that and more. But for right now, if you're a total beginner and you're starting to play the game, just take it at your own pace. If there's things you don't understand, there's so many great resources online that you can check out, especially Wowhead, a really fantastic site, just chock full of great information about quests, items, gear, systems, and more. If you found this video helpful, please let me know by thumbsing the video up. Also, in the comments, if you have any questions or ideas for future topics within this series, let me know about that. Your guys' feedback really can help shape the videos that I create. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day, and good luck in the world of Azeroth.